For example, I could have done it. I could have told her. I could have gone there. I could have made a better decision. Also, we can switch this and replace it with should. So I should have done it. I should have told her. I should have gone there, or I should have made a better decision. Now, I'm going to show you how to do this in Spanish as well. First of all, how do you say I could or I would be able to? Podría. Now, what we want to do is extend this into I could have. So to do that, you again take podría and you will add the verb of haber. So I could have in Spanish is podría haber. Here we have I could with podría and have haber. Onto that, we have one last thing to do, which is to add the past participle of whatever verb you're using. And normally, this will lead us into an ado or ido sound. So, for example, let's put it all together. Hablar would go to hablado. So, to speak, and hablado is spoken. So, what we want to express is I could have spoken. That would be podría haber hablado. Here we have I could with podría, have with haber, and spoken with hablado. Podría haber hablado. How would you say I could have spoken with him? Podría haber hablado con él. To get all the other angles is actually very easy. I'll put them all on one slide for you here. So as you can see, the only thing that you're conjugating is this podría part. The rest of the formula stays stationary. So in the first one, podría haber hablado, I could have spoken. Podrías haber hablado, you could have spoken. Here we have the you could with podrías, have with haber, spoken, hablado. The next one would be for he, she, and it. It's the same as I. And then podríamos haber hablado, we could have spoken. Finally, podrían haber hablado, they could have spoken. So all the other angles are achieved by simply conjugating that sound of podría. Let's take another verb now and go with salir. What is the past participle of salir? The sound is salido. So here we have our ido sound because we're dealing with an IR verb. How would you say I could have gone out? Podría haber salido. Here again we have the I could with podría, have with haber, and the past participle of the verb, salido. Podría haber salido. How would you say you could have gone out? Podrías haber salido. She could have gone out. Podría haber salido. We could have gone out. Podríamos haber salido. They could have gone out. Podrían haber salido. So here you have the formula we use for could have. You will take podría and conjugate that to whatever angle you want, followed always by haber, and then the ado or ido sound. Next up, let's look at should have, and you're going to see that it's very similar. So instead of having podría haber, you would get rid of podría and replace it with debería. Now all the rest remains exactly the same. It's just that you're using debería instead of podría. Let's take an example with the verb to listen, which in Spanish is escuchar. How would you say listened? Escuchado. So here we have the past participle with the ado sound because it's an AR verb. Escuchar, escuchado. Now to say I should have listened, it would become debería haber escuchado. Debería for I should, haber for have, and escuchado, listened. Again, getting all the other angles is just the same. So you would simply conjugate the sound of debería. So you have debería haber for I should have. Debería saber, you should have. Back to the sound of debería haber for he, she, or it should have. Deberíamos saber, we should have. Deberían haber, they should have. So now on this one slide, you have both formulas. The top one for could have and the bottom one for should have. What I'd like to do next is talk about adding pronouns into this formula. And we add them onto haber. So for example, to express I should have called you. Now here is the pronoun you. And this is what gets hooked on to the verb haber. So it would become debería haberte llamado. We're going to keep this as a solid fixed rule throughout all of this module. Whenever you have a pronoun, either a single pronoun or a double pronoun, they will always be added onto haber. So I should have called you. Debería haberte llamado. Let's continue with the verb llamar, and we'll play a little with these pronouns. So te, le, les, and nos. As we know, the verb llamar is one of those in the group that will tend to take the pronoun of le or les. So let's use that. How would you say I should have called her? Debería haberle llamado. Here we have the le for to call to her or to him. Again, it gets hooked on to haber. That's its position in the structure. So, debería haberle llamado. What about I should have called them? Debería haberles llamado. One more. They should have called us. Deberían habernos llamado. So here we have they should, let's say they should have called. So deberían haber llamado. They should have called us. Deberían habernos llamado. What about the verb to buy? That's obviously comprar. And what would be the past participle, meaning bought? Comprado. How would you say I should have bought it? Debería haberlo comprado. Here again, you can see the pronoun is it, and its position in this structure is to always be hooked on to the end of haber. So, debería haberlo comprado. I should have bought it. How would you say I could have bought it? Podría haberlo comprado. You should have bought it. Deberías haberlo comprado. How would you say you shouldn't have bought it? No deberías haberlo comprado. So to get the negative, we simply add no onto the front. You shouldn't have bought it for me. No deberías haberlo comprado para mí. What about he could have bought it? Podría haberlo comprado. We should have bought it for her. Deberíamos haberlo comprado para ella. They should have bought it for you. Deberían haberlo comprado para ti. So let's summarize now. We know that we have our two set phrases. Podría haber for could have and debería haber for should have. To change the angles, you simply will conjugate either podría or debería. Then, when it comes to pronouns, you will always add them on to the end of haber. Let's continue with part 2. Not all verbs follow this ado or ido sound. We have irregular verbs that do not obey those rules. Some examples would be hacer going to hecho, ver going to visto. Here with ser going to sido, it's not necessarily an irregular sound because we have that ido and it is an ER verb, but it's still important to recognize or to see and remind ourselves again that the past participle of ser is sido. Then decir going to dicho is very irregular, and same with poner going to puesto. So going down the right hand side, this one would mean done or made, then seen, been, said or told with dicho, and put with puesto. So what I'd like to do now is to look at how we would use them inside of could have and should have. For example, you should have done it. This would be deberías haberlo hecho. You can see that the formula is the same with deberías saberlo, the pronoun hooked onto haber, but the past participle no longer is an ado or ido sound. Instead, it's gone to hecho. What about this one? How would you say you should have seen it? Deberías haberlo visto. They shouldn't have done it like that. No deberían haberlo hecho así. I shouldn't have put it there. No debería haberlo puesto allí. Taking a closer look at this one, we're in the negative, so no debería haberlo. Again, you can see the pronoun with it being hooked on to the end of haber. But the past participle of poner is not ponido. It's irregular and it goes to the sound of puesto. So this is what you have to watch out for with some of these irregular sounds. This is what breaks our formula, but just from time to time, because there's really not many verbs that do this. So I shouldn't have put it there. No debería haberlo puesto allí. Next up, let's talk about dealing with double pronouns. Again, these will be added onto the end of haber. And if you remember, the sounds were melo, tello, sello, and noslo. So it to me, it to you, it to him, her, or them. This one is very powerful. And finally, noslo, it to us. Taking them on to the end of haber, they would look like this, written all in one word. So habérmelo, habértelo, habérselo. Let's try using them with the verb dar, to give. So the past participle with dar, meaning given, would be dado. So it's regular. Has that ado sound and it's an AR verb, dar, dado. How would you say you could have given it to me? Podrías habérmelo dado. Notice that we have the double pronoun here, it to me, and this must always be hooked on to the end of haber. So, you could, podrías, habérmelo dado. How would you say you should have given it to me? Deberías habérmelo dado. They should have given it to her. Deberían habérselo dado. Notice that we have now it to her, which is sello. That's the sound. Gets hooked onto haber. So they should, deberían, habérselo dado. Let's practice some more with the verb to send, which is mandar. Now, sent, meaning the past participle, will go to the sound of mandado. How would you say we should have sent it to them? Deberíamos habérselo mandado. Here we have the it to them with celo. Remember, this is very powerful. It to him, it to her, it to them. It's all celo. So, deberíamos habérselo mandado. You could have sent it to me. Podrías habérmelo mandado. They shouldn't have sent it to him. No deberían habérselo mandado. Let's practice with one final verb, decir, so to say or to tell. Now, decir will go to dicho, meaning said or told. If we wanted to express, she could have told me, what they will literally say in Spanish is, she could have told it to me. So this is where you will use the double pronoun in Spanish, even though you wouldn't necessarily do it in English. So try to work it out. How would you say it? Podría habérmelo dicho. She could have told me sooner. Podría habérmelo dicho más temprano. So let's now go into a final summary for the past two sections combined. We know that on this one slide we have should have and could have. And if you want to add on pronouns, they get added onto the end of haber, even if they're double pronouns. It's also important to remember that some verbs do not go into this ado or ido sound. And we saw examples with hecho, dicho, and puesto. So instead of this ado or ido, those irregular verbs will go into those irregular sounds. If you found it a little tricky to hook on these pronouns onto the end of haber, that's perfectly normal, because this really makes very little sense in a literal way in English. So it's important that we hold on to the structure. Whenever you see an it to me, it to her, him or them, whatever it is, you simply take those sounds of mello, tello, sello, noslo, and hook them on to haber. If you try to do a literal translation, you'll find yourself getting very confused. So that's definitely to be avoided. Welcome to part 3. What we're going to do are 5 sentences which are a little more complex. That is because we're going to mix could have and would have together in the same phrases. For example, they couldn't have been at the party because I would have seen them. So here we have our could have, and here we have our would have. So we're combining both of those into the one phrase or sentence. I wonder if you can try to work out how you would say this in Spanish. No podrían haber estado en la fiesta porque los habría visto. Analyzing this, we have they couldn't have been. So they couldn't, no podrían, have, haber, and then been, estar goes to estado. This is the past participle. So here we have our formula. No podrían haber estado. We use the estar and not ser because we're talking about location, right? At the party, en la fiesta. Then we have because I would have seen them. So, porque los habría visto. Now, this would have was covered in a previous module. So if you find yourself getting confused here, it might be a sign that you need to go back and review that module. Let's try another. You couldn't have said it to her because she would have told me. No podrías habérselo dicho porque me habría dicho. Notice here, first of all, that we're using dicho and dicho because in English we have said and told, but in Spanish these are the same things. So this is why we have dicho and dicho. Then we have this double pronoun here of it to her. So immediately Actually, this is the first thing that you should see in this translation. Your mind goes to the sound of celo, and you're going to hook it onto haber. So, you couldn't, no podrías, habérselo dicho, okay, have said it to her, because she would have, porque me habría dicho, she would have told me. You could also, I suppose, say porque me lo habría dicho, because she would have told it to me. Either way. Next up we have, I could have done it myself, but it would have been very difficult. Podría haberlo hecho yo mismo o yo misma, pero habría sido muy difícil. So, I could have done it. Podría haberlo hecho. But it would have. So, habría. It would have is all contained within habría. Then been, we go on to the ser side because we would say es difícil. So we stay on that ser side, pero habría sido muy difícil. The next sentence is, we could have put the present on the table, but they would have found it. Podríamos haber puesto el regalo en la mesa, pero lo habrían encontrado. So we could have put, podríamos haber puesto, the present on the table, el regalo en la mesa, but they would have found it. The lo that comes up front here, so lo habrían encontrado. Let's try one more. You could have waited longer, but then you would have arrived late. Podrías haber esperado más tiempo, pero entonces habrías llegado tarde. Here we have, you could have waited. Podrías haber esperado. Longer would be más tiempo. But then, pero entonces, you would have arrived. Habrías, for you would have arrived, llegado, late, tarde. Now, these 5 sentences are a very good example of where you will find yourself mixing could have and would have together, because it is something that sounds very natural in English and we use it a lot. So it's important that we are able not just to do individual modules correctly, but we are actually able to combine those modules together and also get them correct. This is kind of a step forward that you have to learn how to put it all together, because it's only by doing that that you reach the level of being able to tell stories or speak Spanish in full paragraphs.